How are you feeling about FrameKit? How do you feel about the progress you've made so far with it?
It's interesting how many times we've had to pivot when it seems like such a simple problem that we're solving, where the problem is simply at first building a tool with AI that allows e-commerce brands and marketing teams to create product photos. But even something as simple as that, there's so many different ways that you can approach the problem, which has meant that we've had to actually pivot quite a number of times on the tech side. Actually, mostly just on the tech side. We're still kind of figuring out our go-to-market strategy. We're still figuring out who the ICP is. But from the tech perspective, we've had to pivot a lot of times. Initially, FrameKit was going to be 3D template oriented, which I think is what Omi is going for, still what they're going for even now. But I think that's kind of fundamentally the wrong approach. I think in many cases, when someone wants to make something, they have a vision for what they want to make. They have a picture in their mind of what it is that they want. And I don't think a template is the best way to approach that, especially now that you've got AI, right? The user can collect a bunch of photos that they like, that are in a similar style to what they want, bundle it all together, put a prompt in there, and they get back out an image that they've created. Well, that an AI stable diffusion model has created, but is of their creation. It's their idea. And I think that model works better than the template approach, right? Because the template approach is you go digging through all of the different categories, or maybe you search and you try and find a template that looks somewhat like what you're after, and then you try and customize it to get what you want out of it. But I think it's a backwards approach. And also the main reason why we didn't go for that is because of the cost to have a template based system. Well, you gotta have all of those templates on hand for customers to use. If you want to have an app that's template based that will work for every kind of customer that comes your way, you need to have every kind of template imaginable, which will cost lots of money, especially if they're 3D templates and you want them to be realistic, high quality. Realistic, high quality 3D scenes cost a lot of money, take a lot of time for people to make. So that was the problem that we ran into fairly early on, even just with the first customer, the very first customer that we got. We suddenly realized this idea that we had in our heads of templates, 3D templates, it's not going to work.
Originally, you described the core premise to me as a pack of templates to help you get started. And then I asked if you were going to individually make every template, and you said you'd make one template and use AI to create variations on it. Why is that no longer feasible? How has it evolved past a point where you can just create one template and let AI do the rest?
So the first customer that we ever had was the English tea shop. It's like an international tea brand. Simply, they just wanted a new creative campaign, a new series of photos for one of their lines of products. And when we had the call with them, we created some initial images using this template, 3D template idea. And then they came back to us and they said, "Oh, actually, no, not quite what we're after. Could we get some photos of it was boxes of tea bags. Can we get some photos of the products in situ in a cafe, in a metropolitan cafe, busy cafe with people hustling, bustling?" And I'm thinking, a cafe with people? How are we going to do that? How are we going to make an entire cafe as a 3D template? So Rush is going to have to build an entire realistic cafe. But what if they want to change it? Well, that means we're going to need to have loads of cafes. And then I thought, oh, wait, well, isn't this just going to be the same problem that we have for every conceivable product? What if it's a watch brand and they want a photo of their product in a jewelry store? What if it's a chocolate brand and they want a photo of it in a candy store? And yeah, basically quickly realized that this was not even remotely feasible, mainly because there's plenty of free scenes online that you can find. Sure, there's loads of free or even paid cafe scenes that you can find online, 3D templates. But first, you have to pay for them. If they're good, you have to pay a lot for them. And most importantly, there's a very finite quantity of them, of good ones, realistic ones that are photorealistic, which is what we're going for. So even forgetting the monetary side of things, it's the quantity. The quantity is a challenge because there's such a finite quantity of these really good high quality 3D assets just generally in the world that you can get. That's that in itself is a bottleneck because there are millions of e-commerce stores, tens of millions of them, if not almost 100 million, which means that we might need tens of millions or millions of 3D scenes. And if each 3D scene costs over £100 to make, which it would do, then we need to spend almost £1 billion to get all of the scenes that we might need, which is obviously completely unachievable. So the pivot that we made was, instead of placing the customer's product into a pre-built 3D environment, let's AI generate an image and use that as the environment. And now we don't need templates, right? Now there's no concept or requirement for templates at all, because the environment that the product is being placed in is now AI generated, right? So we don't need to create thousands and thousands and thousands of different cafes and restaurants and bars and outside a park. We don't need to create any of that. You would simply AI generate the image. The image looks realistic. And now the image can be whatever the customer desires, right? Anything that they can imagine or think of, they can prompt their way to it. Obviously, there's a bit of nuance in that. In many cases, it's not just a case where you just say, create a cafe, and it creates an incredible cafe straight out of the gate. There's kind of some nuance to it. You still have to have a clear vision that you want to achieve. Otherwise, you'll get generic and bad quality. So the person that creates the image still needs to have creativity and still needs to have direction. They need to know what they want. We have built a system to try and automate that as much as possible, but ultimately, to create something really fantastic, it needs to be someone who knows how to create something really fantastic. It needs to be someone who understands lighting, composition, color, has a creative mind, is able to come up with unique and interesting ideas and scenes. So to a degree, you can't really fully automate the whole process, but the workflow that we have works well in the sense that a customer can upload images that they like, pick a product, write a brief description of the image that they want, and then our system will create an image. And then in the studio, they can customize it, they can change it. And that was probably the biggest pivot, was moving towards that.
With that in mind, what would you now say is the ratio of human to AI involvement? Is it now mostly human? Was it always mostly human?
I'd say it depends. I'd say now there can be more hands-free automated image generation. Well, actually, no, because we still would have had that with the template approach. With the template approach, the idea was that the user would type in a prompt, and then we would use AI to pick the most relevant template based on their prompt, and then we would use AI to position the product in the 3D scene, and then position the camera, and then position the lighting. The challenge with doing that, yeah, is first of all, having loads of templates. Second of all, doing all of those steps is really complicated, so not feasible. But with this new approach, you can have a completely hands-free experience where the customer simply describes the image that they want, and then FrameKit essentially does all of it automatically. But will you get an incredible photo straight out the gate? Probably not. All of the photos that I'm making at the moment, so every day I'm making 3 images in FrameKit to post on LinkedIn, Instagram, all of the social media channels that we have. And when I'm doing that, I'm not using the automated flow, because if you know what you're doing, you can make a much better image in FrameKit. And AI is not. See, a part of me really despises the fact that the word AI is now has now been coined as the term to describe image generation and large language models, because actually it couldn't be further from AI. There is no intelligence in a stable diffusion model at all, like none whatsoever. So when an image gets generated, it's not intelligently doing it. Really, all it's doing is it's a glorified search engine, right? All of the images in the data set have a piece of text associated with them. And when you put a piece of text in, it will calculate based on all of its training data what combination of pixels probabilistically are most likely to be correct based on the training data. There's no intelligence, no thinking, no understanding of what's in the image at all. That it doesn't have any understanding of words, of letters, or what any of it means. There is no thought. It is tokens in, pixels out, and there's a great big net of probabilistic calculation that's done based on some training data, and that's it. Which is why AI can't create a fantastic original image, because by definition, that kind of is almost not possible, because the most common outputs that you would get from a model would be the most common input, which by definition is average. So if the user tries to generate an image with FrameKit in a completely hands-free experience, they will get a very average output. But if someone who knows what they're doing positions the products the way that they want to, do a couple of iterations on the image that they're creating. Oh no, we want we want some flowers on the left. The flower should be blue. Let's have something in the background that's out of focus. Bring this closer to the foreground. Change the composition a little bit. That looks good. Okay, now let's position the product. I don't like the lighting. Let's move the lighting. Let's have some directional lighting from the left. Make it a bit warmer. Add some highlights to the product. All of these things take critical creative decision making. Taste, right? And all of the tools that you have in FrameKit allow you to do that faster, more easily, more cost effectively. But could you create a fantastic image in a completely hands-free manner? I'd say no. It's probably impossible. It would probably always be impossible. So I'd say, is FrameKit more or less human involved? I'd say it depends on the person. Some people just simply don't have a creative capability. They don't really know they don't really understand lighting concepts, composition, color, color space, all of those things. But at the very least, with FrameKit, they don't need to. They don't have to spend huge amounts of money to get some images. They can use FrameKit, get some decent images of their product. And if they want to, they need to hire a professional to create great images. And I guess in a way, that's kind of how it is right now anyway. We've just raised the bar a bit higher, right? Right now, most small e-commerce businesses do their own photography because they can't afford to hire someone, to hire a professional. So I would imagine that it will probably, in that sense, probably stay the same. Companies with big budgets want the best and most engaging content, and that will always be coming from creative, talented people. We've basically just raised the bar. Now it's easier to create fantastic content, but you still need to hire that same talented person to create it in the first place. It's now just easier for them.
You previously described the core premise in a very short sentence. It's meant to be a pack of templates to help you get started. If you were to describe the core premise now, how would you describe it?
I would say a powerful way for creative people to make great content without needing to learn incredibly complex technical tools and spend vast amounts of money on incredibly expensive equipment. Think of the days when we were back in college. One of the biggest barriers to entry was needing to buy a £40,000 camera, was needing to buy all of this lighting, was needing to buy all of these various different things. And you're almost gatekept in a way from being able to create great things. But if the most prominent narrative in the creative space around AI is, AI is taking everyone's jobs. In reality, I think what it's doing is it's removed the gatekeeping. Now creative people can make incredible things without having to spend huge amounts of money, and also without having to spend huge amounts of time. And also, it means that people who can't afford to hire someone to do all of the images for their products, they're currently having to spend money on a camera. They can't figure out how to use the camera. They've never used it before. They don't really want to spend thousands of pounds on camera equipment, lighting, and all of this to take product photos. Well, now they don't have to. They can create good enough images of their products in FrameKit. So yeah, I think to summarize it, powerful tools for creative people that doesn't cost an arm and a leg, but also something that lets ordinary people create compelling content for their business without having to spend huge amounts of money.
So really, you're putting more emphasis on the creative studio as a whole, rather than just that one aspect of it, which is the image generation.
Yeah, I mean, the image generation is like a cool tool, but the automated flow is not where the best content of FrameKit is going to be made. By no means. It's where the most cost-effective content will come from, but it's not where the best content will come from because it's automated. So by definition, you're going to get the most average looking photos from that process. But for many people, that's all they want. But for brands that want really incredible creative content, maybe their brand is really, really heavily centered around visuals, creative ideas, and engaging, thought-provoking pieces of content, the automated flow is probably not what they would want because they already are probably spending thousands a month on creative agencies. They will still want the same level of creativity and ingenuity in their content, which you can only really do if it's a person doing it, right? You need to have a person to come up with an original idea and then bring that original idea to life. And AI can't do that. I mean, it's physically not possible for it to do that because it can't think. There's no thought in a stable diffusion model.
How much further do you think your AI tools and your creative studio can go? What possible features can your audience expect in the future?
I'd say lighting is an interesting one, mainly for the automated flow. For the automated flow to work well, which is the main one that we're going after at the moment, we're going to train our own lighting model that's specifically trained on how to relight an object that has been placed into a scene unnaturally. So we 3D render an object, we put it on top of a 2D image such that it looks like it's there in the scene. But of course, the lighting on the object does not match the lighting that exists in the environment. This is like common compositing challenge in film and television, right? Very common VFX challenge. You need to match the lighting in the 3D scene, the lighting that you see in the 2D image, which you're trying to composite into. We're trying to create a model that can do that automatically. The reason why we're focusing on that now, on the automated flow now, is because we need to think about what kind of customer is easiest for us to go after now. There's no point us chasing after customers that are harder to acquire at this early stage. Designers, photographers, creative people, creative agencies, those people that want the very best images, the best quality, the best tools, those are the hardest customers for us to acquire now because we need to invest all of our time into building these complex tools. Photoshop has been around for almost 20 years. There's a reason why the Creative Cloud apps are the gold standard is because they've invested billions into developers to build all of these tools. Well, we don't have billions. We have a couple of guys working part-time to build this. So we need to find a clever, scrappy way. How can we build something that will appeal to someone now? And the one that I think will work here and now in the short term that we can code without spending a huge amount of time building it is the automated flow. That we can do now. Building all of these complex visual tools in the studio that most designers would expect, that's going to take months. We're months away, maybe even a year away from that, which is why we're going after the automated flow now. Because the automated flow really appeals to those people who are satisfied with average images, which for the most part, I think, are small e-commerce businesses, solo founders of e-commerce businesses, those kind of people. They're currently struggling to get images of their products without spending 500, 600 pounds, maybe even 1,000 or more just for a photo shoot. Well, now they can use FrameKit for £25 a month, spend £50 to get the 3D model of their product, and then boom, they can create photos in the automated flow and they'll be happy with them. But a designer, every call that we've had with a designer, the designer says, oh, the eraser tool isn't quite as smooth and quite as fluid as the one in Photoshop. Oh, do you have the lasso tool? Oh, do you have the pen tool? Oh, do you... And I'm thinking, man, we are months away from having all of those things polished because they're complicated to do. So up next in the pipeline is probably the polished and finished version of the automated workflow, which will be customer selects their product, selects some reference images like a mood board, and they maybe type in a brief description. I want a photo of my perfume bottle on a marble surface with some plants and jungle elements in the background, and then it will generate that. That's kind of the feature that we're going after. Now that will probably be the one that we will be pushing in our marketing and outreach, that we'll be selling. And then hopefully by the end of this year, once we've got some more capital coming in, we can invest more time into refining all of the studio tools, and then we'll be in a much better position to go after the designers, the creative people.
I look forward to seeing these features. What are some of the product photos you come up with now that you're most proud of?
I'd say the most recent ones that we've done, probably the ones that we've done of the Aesop perfume bottle and the whiskey bottles. Some of them just are spot on, are really, really spot on. Some of the images that we generate, I'm really blown away by. I can't believe that we don't already have thousands of customers, because there really is nothing else that can create images like this right now. That probably won't last for long. I'm sure there'll be competition at some point, but right now, there's nothing that can create images as good as the ones that we can create in FrameKits, the ones that we're posting on our social media. There were some images that I created the other day for Absolute Vodka. This is where some of the limitations of stable diffusion models lie at the moment. Really pushing it to its limit with the 3 images that I did for the vodka bottles. Natural textures, it still struggles with. Even the best stable diffusion models right now still struggle with natural textures. Things like moss, leaves, small, fine, intricate details. It still can't do them. It kind of blurs them together and almost mashes them into a mushy, flowy texture that just looks AI. But you only really get that when you try to create images that have huge amounts of detail and texture in them. For the most part, most images, you don't really have that problem in. It's only in images where you have lots and lots of elements, lots of things, lots of different textures. As soon as that comes into play, then you can kind of more easily tell, okay, this is very clearly AI. Look at those leaves. That what even is that? But I expect that in the coming months or the coming year, we will probably get to a point where you can use an off-the-shelf foundation stable diffusion model for generating images, and it, no matter what prompt you give it, the image that it generates will be so accurate and so detailed in the textures that it would be impossible to tell if it's AI generated or not. I think we're getting pretty close to that actually happening.
That's awesome. Have you got any final words for the customers you already have and possible customers out there? What's one last thing you'd like to say to them?
Well, the current customers that we have, I guess, thank you. I'd say thank you for trying out a dodgy tool with a small team of people. But the first early customers that we get are what's going to make this whole company and this whole dream come to fruition. Everyone on the team is working very hard. And for future customers, come and use FrameKit. That's what I'd say to future customers. Come and use FrameKit. Come now.